Your brain has a bouncer. Every thought you think during the day gets checked at the door, evaluated, filtered, and most of the time, quietly rejected. But for roughly 10 minutes every night, that bouncer steps away, and whatever you're holding in your mind during those 10 minutes walks straight in, unchecked. That window has a name: hypnagogia, the transitional state between full waking consciousness and sleep. Your eyes are closed, your body is heavy, and your mind is doing something it almost never does during the day, accepting information without arguing with it. During normal waking hours, your brain runs a constant verification loop. Every idea gets cross-referenced against past experience, logical consistency, and your existing model of who you are and what's possible. This is useful. It keeps you from believing every passing thought, but it also keeps you from absorbing the ones you actually want to install. You can repeat an affirmation 10,000 times while fully alert, and some part of your mind whispers back each time, "No, that's not true yet." The drowsy state dissolves that whisper. Researchers studying brainwave patterns during sleep onset found something worth paying attention to. As you drift from wakefulness towards sleep, your dominant brainwave frequency drops from beta, the fast analytical rhythm of daytime thinking, into alpha and then into theta. That theta range, roughly 4 to 8 cycles per second, is where things get interesting. Theta is the frequency measured during deep meditation, during hypnosis, and during the moments right before you lose consciousness at night. In all three states, the same thing happens. Suggestibility spikes, and the analytical gatekeeping function dims. So what does that mean in practice? It means a mental image held during theta doesn't get interrogated. It gets absorbed. The brain processes it with the same architecture it uses to process actual sensory experience, because the module that distinguishes real from imagined is the exact module going offline. Think about the last vivid dream you had. For those few seconds after waking, before full awareness returned, the dream felt completely real. Your heart was pounding. Your emotions were genuine. Your body had responded to events that never happened. That response came from the same mechanism. The critical filter was off. The imagery went straight to the operating system. Thomas Edison knew about this state, though he described it in his own terms. He used to sit in a chair holding steel balls over metal plates. As he drifted off, his muscles would relax, the balls would drop, the clang would wake him, and he'd immediately write down whatever ideas had surfaced in that liminal window. Salvador Dali did the same thing with a key in a tin plate. They were both farming the same neurological territory, the moment when the rigid daytime mind releases its grip, and something looser, stranger and far more receptive takes over. But Edison and Dali were harvesting creative insights. The mechanism runs deeper than creativity. A series of studies on motor learning found that athletes who performed mental rehearsal during relaxed, drowsy states showed measurably greater improvement than those who visualized while fully alert. Same images, same duration, same athletes. The variable was brainwave state. When the analytical mind stepped back, the imagery landed deeper in the motor system. Muscles that had never physically performed the movement began showing microactivations consistent with the rehearsed pattern. Your body was responding to something it knew hadn't happened. And it was responding because the part of the brain that would normally flag the experience as hypothetical was running at reduced power. This is where it gets personal. Every night, you pass through this window, every single night, and whatever mental content you're carrying as you cross that threshold gets privileged access. Most people spend those moments reviewing the day's anxieties, replaying arguments, or scrolling through worry. They're performing unintentional mental rehearsal of exactly the patterns they want to escape. The bouncer is gone, and the anxiety walks right in, takes a seat, and makes itself comfortable in the deeper architecture. Now flip that. Picture someone who, instead of letting the mind freewheel into worry, deliberately holds a single clear image as drowsiness sets in. A specific scene, a specific feeling, a specific version of themselves operating in a way they want to internalize. The image doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be vivid and emotionally engaged. The theta state handles the rest. Hypnotherapists have operated on this principle for over a century. The induction phase of clinical hypnosis is mechanically an artificial reproduction of the hypnagogic state. Slow the breathing, relax the body. Guide the brainwaves down from beta into alpha, then theta. Once the patient reaches that frequency, therapeutic suggestions bypass the resistance that made them necessary in the first place. The critical mind that says, "I can't change," is the same mind that's now offline. Critics raise a fair point here. If the mind is that suggestible during theta, doesn't that make the state dangerous? Could you accidentally program yourself with the wrong content? The honest answer is yes, which is precisely why the default content matters so much. You're already being programmed during this window. Every night, the only question is whether the programming is deliberate or accidental. Most people have never once chosen what to think about as they fall asleep. They let the mind run its default loop. And the default loop for most people is fear. There's a physical component to this that deserves attention. During hypnagogia, muscle tone decreases progressively, the mechanism that prevents you from acting out dreams. But sensory processing is still partially active. You can still hear sounds in the room. You might see phosphenes, those floating shapes behind closed eyelids. The brain is in a hybrid state, receiving real sensory data while simultaneously generating internal imagery. And it's blending the two without distinguishing between them. This is why a mental image held during this phase feels qualitatively different from daytime visualization. During the day, you know you're imagining. There's a constant meta-awareness. This is a thought. This is pretend. During hypnagogia, that meta-awareness fades. The image starts to feel like a place you're actually in. Colors get brighter. Sounds emerge that you didn't consciously generate. The scene starts to evolve on its own, picking up momentum from deeper processing layers that the waking mind normally overrides. Electroencephalography studies show something specific happening during this transition. The default mode network, the brain's self-referential storytelling system, becomes hyperactive right as the executive control network powers down. You get maximum narrative generation with minimum editorial oversight. The brain is telling itself stories, and the editor has gone home for the night. If you've ever had a hypnagogic jerk, that sudden full-body twitch as you're falling asleep, you felt the boundary. Your brain generated an image, probably of falling or tripping, and your motor system responded as if it were real. Adrenaline spiked, muscles fired. For one fraction of a second, your entire body was convinced of something your conscious mind would have dismissed instantly. One fraction of a second was enough to produce a full physiological cascade. Now stretch that fraction of a second into 5 minutes, into 10. Hold a deliberate image, a chosen scene, an intentional emotional state across the full duration of the hypnagogic window. The body responds the entire time. Neurochemistry shifts to match the imagined scenario. Stress hormones decrease if the scene is calm. Muscle tension patterns reorganize around the rehearsed activity. The brain begins encoding the experience with the same mechanisms it uses to consolidate actual memories during sleep. You've probably noticed that your emotional state when you fall asleep powerfully shapes the emotional tone of your dreams. Fall asleep angry, and the dreamscape turns hostile. Fall asleep peaceful, and the dreams soften. This correlation is the hypnagogic window in action, the last conscious content before sleep gets handed off to the unconscious processing systems that run all night. It becomes the seed crystal around which hours of neural consolidation organize. The practical application is almost too simple to feel real. Choose an image. Make it specific and sensory rich. A room you want to be in. A conversation where you're speaking with the confidence you want to embody. The feeling of waking up after a problem is solved. Hold it as you feel the heaviness come. Let the analytical mind soften. When stray thoughts intrude, return to the image without frustration, the way you'd redirect a flashlight beam. The drowsier you get, the less effort this takes, because the very faculty that generates mental resistance is the one shutting down. Edison dropped steel balls. Dali dropped a key. They were catching the door at the exact moment it opened. The door still opens every night. For everyone, the only difference is what you're carrying when you walk through it. And the same mechanism that lets imagery slip past your filters at night explains why the stories you tell yourself during the day have so much less power than you think, which is a completely different kind of problem.